ICE's fitness crisis is stalling the administration's deportation drive. Disney and America's top universities push back against government-era control. A Trump watchdog nominee collapses under racist Nazi streak text. And Congressman Scott Perry claims Democrats, quote, hate the military, reviving one of politics' oldest tricks. And Paris's Cédric Grolet goes full Willy Wonka, proving that chocolate, like beauty, is mostly marketing. Today on Filtered. More to come. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. This is Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. This is where you get your daily deep dive into the top business stories of the day, technology, economic, and culture stories of the day, filtered through the lens of communication skills and personal development. But first up, let's take a look at yesterday's market vitals. The S&P 500 closed at 6,735.13. That's up 1.07%. The NASDAQ Composite closed at 22,990.54. That's up 1.37%. Keep in mind the long term. Over the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 7.47% per year. The NASDAQ 100 has gone up on average 9.73% per year. So please do keep in mind the long term. That's what we're about here at Filtered. Let's dive right in to issue one today. ICE recruits flunk fitness test, derailing Trump's deportation push. According to The Atlantic, President Trump's plan to double the size of the ICE workforce is hitting an unlikely obstacle: push-ups and jogging. At the agency's Georgia Training Academy, more than a third of recruits have failed the basic fitness test, which only requires 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and a 1.5 mile run in under 14 minutes. One ICE official called it, quote, pathetic, warning that the agency's new hires are, quote, athletically allergic and unfit for field work. The Trump administration has already cut the training period in half, from 4 months to just 8 weeks, in an effort to get 10,000 new deportation officers on the street by January. Department of Homeland Security officials insist that standards aren't being lowered, only streamlined. But insiders say the reality is chaos. Unfit recruits, not enough equipment, and no clear plan for what to do with failed candidates. As one senior ICE officer put it bluntly, it's a disaster. Okay, so what's the real message here? There is a Trump. That's not it. There is a problem, not just with Trump's ICE agency, but with all of America. Young people today are completely unfit. They're not fit to jog 10 feet across the street to chase an illegal immigrant. They're not fit to defend the military. They're not fit to be in a police force or a fire department. We are raising a generation of couch potatoes who can barely walk across the street. And that's a huge problem. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So this is not a Trump problem. Let's be clear about this. This is a bipartisan problem, because for years now, I would argue, especially since 2000, the late 2000s, 2007, 2009, when the iPhone really took off, that we have become a country of couch potatoes. There's more and more sitting, looking, less exercise, less outdoor play. In my own daughter's public school, middle school here in Florida, they have literally zero physical education after her first semester of middle school. Zero physical education. And yes, it is a problem. So what are we as a nation going to do about it? Now, I'm not particularly worried about not getting enough ICE officials. That's me. You have your own preferences of what you think are needs, but presumably you do want police officers in your community able to run one block chasing a mugger without huffing and puffing and getting so winded they give up. and a mugger realizes I only have to jog 50 feet and I'm home clear. We don't want that. The bigger problem is just people are dying earlier. You look at nations that spend a lot less than we do on healthcare, that are frankly poorer nations than ours. Italy, France. What do they have in common? They often live 7 to 10 years longer than we do. Why? Because they're in better shape. They're not lugging around an extra 50 pounds of blubber. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to fat shame anybody, but it's a simple reality that with Americans becoming increasingly obese, increasingly overweight, increasingly diabetic, any kind of job that requires mobility, people are increasingly not able to be qualified for. It's certainly affecting our military, but anything that involves physicality, whether you want to be an ICE agent, a firefighter, a police officer. Let's look at some of the facts now. The standards are not that high. You have to be able to do 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and run 1.5 miles in 14 minutes. I got to tell you, I'm 62. I'm nobody's idea of a 1975 Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Universe, but I do 20 push-ups every day easily. Why is that easy for me to do? Because I have on my calendar do 20 push-ups today, every day, and I do it every day. Takes about 30 seconds. It's not hard to do if you tell yourself physical activity, physical fitness is important. If you tell yourself the most important thing to do is sit back, play video games, place a bet on the football game tonight, place a bet on crypto going up, swipe left, swipe right on Tinder matches you never actually meet. If you tell yourself that, well, no, you're not going to be able to do 15 sit-ups. You're not even going to be able to sit up out of bed or off the couch. And this is not a political left-right problem. You can't blame Trump for this. You can't blame Biden for this. This is a deep-rooted cultural problem. Now, the other requirements that people are not able to, if we're talking about 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds, can't do 15 push-ups, can't do 32 sit-ups. I can do 32 sit-ups. If I can do it, you should be able to as well, unless you have some deep-rooted, pre-existing condition or disease. Now, running 1.5 miles in 14 minutes, I could do that, but I would be sweating and huffing and puffing by the end. I do run every single day. Am I a world-class runner, a champion marathoner? No. But I run on the treadmill for 30 minutes a day, or I run outside for 30 minutes. And when I say run, I mean a slow jog with occasional sprints. Now, my virtue signaling here, I don't think there's any virtue in letting people know you don't want your body to rot. You don't want your body to fall apart. I don't deserve any pat on the back for that. You don't either. Do I do it every single day? No, but I try to do something. Played pickleball yesterday with my wife. Got really sweaty. Got a good workout. Got on the treadmill. Did walking around the community. If I can do it, you can do. Now, I realize some of you are saying, well, TJ, I've got 3 kids. I'm juggling 3 jobs. I've got an hour and a half travel. Okay. But a lot of this you can control with your diet. Simply not consuming sugary beverages will make it a lot easier to jog if you have to do a jogging test. Will make it a lot easier to do a sit-up. If you haven't seen your toes in 5 years, it's going to be much harder to do a sit-up. Let's look at some more facts here. 1/3 of ICE Academy recruits failed the physical test. And mind you, they're not recruiting 62-year-olds like me. They're recruiting a lot of young men who think of themselves as macho, former football players, people in the prime of their youth, and yet they can't do 15 push-ups. Training time was cut from 4 months to 8 weeks to try to make it easier to hire more people. Apparently, that's not working. Many officials say the recruits misrepresented their fitness on the application. Apparently, they asked people to self-evaluate, and you're supposed to say, Are you in poor health, average health, or superior athleticism, or something to that effect? And what do you know? People are saying, hey, I'm in great shape. I mean, that's kind of looking at someone's online singles dating profile. And people say, yeah, I'm taller than average. Yeah, I have better hair than average. Really? Really? You're going to listen to someone's self-assessment? The Department of Homeland Security, claims 85% of new hirees will be fast-tracked from existing law enforcement. So they're going to say, okay, you already made this police department, or you already been in the military. We're going to kind of grandfather you in. Maybe those folks will be in good shape, or maybe it's just a way of breaking the rules. I don't know. ICE is already offering a $50,000 bonus and loan forgiveness to attract candidates. And apparently that is not enough to get people off the couch. Folks, I'm not going to kid you here. This is an existential life and death crisis. For most of human history, people on average died at around 30. Yeah, there were a lot of infants dying, but really anybody, no matter how healthy they were, 40, 45, even a George Washington at age 62, you can be in great health. Boom, you get one cut, an infection. There are no antibiotics. You're dead. You're in great shape, great health your whole life. You're 46, and an infection comes around, some sort of infectious disease, and oops, there's no vaccine until not that long ago. Boom, you're dead. So for most of human history, life really was short and grim for humans. We're talking 30, 35 years of age. It has skyrocketed, certainly the last 100 to 150 years, thanks to better sanitation, thanks to antibiotics, and yes, vaccines. I know some of you don't want to hear that, but it's true. And now we have a situation where life expectancy is actually going down. Part of that is because, in America at least, it's especially concentrated on men. We've got a suicide problem. People are overdosing on drugs, legal drugs, although they might not be getting it legally. Things like Oxycontin and other drugs. People are ODing and killing themselves on drugs, in part because they're depressed, and in part they're depressed because they sit around on the couch all day long, scrolling their phone, looking at how doom-filled the world is. Well, here's a unique solution to mental health and physical health. I realize I'm talking against my own book here, but put the phone down, go for a walk today. Better yet, go for a jog, go for a bike ride, do something, do anything to get moving. Regardless of whether you want to apply for ICE and pass their physical, nothing bad can happen to you by getting in better physical shape. So it's a problem at many levels. Part of it is we're all spending way too much time, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, of staring at a phone all day long. And yeah, you can stare at your phone and look at and be on a treadmill, and I do that sometimes, but you really can't stare at a phone and play soccer and play a game of basketball or really run competitively. And unfortunately, if it's a choice between those two, people say, you know what, I'd rather stare at my phone. You're not going to be able to run a 1.5 mile run in 14 minutes if you routinely are consuming 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day, which many Americans do. Between the double and triple sized, the Wendy's triple and the half pounder at the burger joints, eating entire pizza, supersized portions, 64-ounce big gulps and giant drinks. There's simply no way you can eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories and snack all day long and typically run 1.5 miles in under 14 minutes, unless you are a professional athlete, which, let's face it, chances are you're not. I'm not either. So let's look at some more facts here. The officials are also describing shortages of guns, parking, and even bathroom space with ICE. So ICE has a number of problems, but the very first one is if people you're recruiting can't even do a slow jog to go catch that that migrant they're trying to catch, if that is your goal, they're not going to do a lot of good, and it's not helpful. So we as a nation have got to do more to actually encourage healthy living and to move more. I try to do it I try to consciously think. I've recently about every action and how it either increases my movement or decreases movement. Recently, I moved from an urban center, a small village in South Florida, where I was constantly walking everywhere, to a more suburban place where things are stretched out and it's not easy to get around, where everyone either drives around or takes a motorized golf cart. And I said to myself, no, not going to do it. The last thing I want is even more time spent sitting on my rear end, which I'm already doing for you an hour and 15 minutes a day, which I'm happy to do, but I don't need more of it. So I got something that looks like a golf cart, but it's actually a quadricycle. I have to pedal it. It kind of looks like, if you remember the cartoon, The Flintstones, what Fred Flintstone would drive around. I'm pedaling it, and it creates motion and action. And does it get some stares? Yes. Do some of my family members think it looks ridiculous? Sure. I don't care. I'm moving. And while I'm not planning on going out for ICE and trying to pass their physical, it's going to be very nice to know I could pass it if I absolutely had to, or if I wanted to for some reason. Lots more to come today on Filtered. Stay tuned. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now. Disney and universities push back on Trump-era control. According to the New York Times and The Atlantic, America's cultural and educational institutions are quietly revolting against administration pressure campaigns and paying a price for it. Disney Plus and Hulu saw a wave of cancellations last month after Disney briefly suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live for remarks he made about Charlie Kirk's assassination. About 3 million Americans canceled Disney Plus and 4 million dropped Hulu in what became a flashpoint over free speech and corporate fear of political retribution. At the same time, most major universities, including Brown, Dartmouth, MIT, Penn, USC, the University of Virginia, Vanderbilt, the University of Arizona, and the University of Texas, were offered a White House plan promising preferential federal funding if they agreed to new ideological conditions. The proposal's most controversial clause required universities to reaffirm that academic freedom is not absolute, and to close or defund departments that punish, belittle, or spark violence against conservative ideas. 8 of the 9 schools rejected or expressed strong opposition. Only the University of Texas hinted at openness and willingness to sign it. From Disney Studios to America's universities, 2 great engines of freedom expression, of free expression, now find themselves in the same fight, resisting a government push to dictate who speaks, what's funny, and what can be taught. Okay, so what's the real message here? Let's dive a little deeper here. Finally, Americans are pushing back against this administration. We see it with all the cancellations of Disney and Hulu. We see it with 8 of 9 major universities saying, no, we're not going to sign an ideological litmus test just to get cash from Washington. Let's dig a little deeper here. These strands, I do think, are connected because it does seem like most of this year, no matter how many barriers were broken by this administration, how many norms were slashed, how many separation of power ideals were shredded, there just wasn't much pushback. And now we are finally seeing some pushback. We obviously heard about people canceling Disney and Hulu a month or so ago when the whole Jimmy Kimmel cancellation thing happened. But now that quantitatively it's come out, 3 million cancellations to Disney Plus, 4.1 million subscribers lost to Hulu. Now that's partially owned by Disney. So that's why people would do that. So that's a lot of money. And I haven't personally subscribed to Disney. I'm assuming it's one of these that's, $9 or $10 a month, more than $100 a year. We're looking at $300 million there. So that's a lot of money. And that's what made Disney change its tune. That's what made it the parent company say, maybe we made a mistake here. We thought our biggest trouble was appeasing the FCC and the administration, but because they could put us out of business. But it turns out if we anger and alienate our customers, i.e. the viewers, they're going to put us out of business too. So maybe we give them Jimmy Kimmel back. For much of this year, we've seen university after university capitulate to the demands of this administration. And now, finally, we're seeing some fight back. Again, Brown University, it's one of the Ivy League universities, Dartmouth College, another Ivy League school, MIT, equally prestigious, University of Pennsylvania, another Ivy League school, all saying no to the demands of this administration, that they essentially don't say anything to offend conservatives, which in the past has been defined as anything suggesting slavery was bad. Not exactly the mission universities are supposed to be following. University of California, Southern California, a very prestigious school in its own right. I briefly, because they accepted me to their law school many years ago. I didn't go, but it's a great school. University of Virginia, University of Arizona, Vanderbilt University, and University of Texas. Only University of Texas said, sure, whatever you say, we'll sign the dotted line. So that's a bit of a black eye. Now, they're a state school in Texas, a very conservative state. They're going to have a lot of political pressures anytime they want to stand up to Trump. So I can imagine that wasn't even debated much at the University of Texas. But the University of Arizona, again, another conservative state, although they do have some Democratic leadership as well, said the plan was incompatible with institutional independence. So we're seeing tensions here, and finally there's some pushback. For so much of what's happened in the last 10 months in this country, the pushing has been one way, and then the other side falling over and giving up. And now we are seeing opposition to this idea that, no, we're not all just going to become right-wing conservatives overnight. We're not all going to pretend that the only legitimate idea in America is ones endorsed by MAGA or right-wing conservatives. We are a diverse country with diverse viewpoints, and universities of all places should be places where there is diversity of thought. Now, there are some conservative critics who say that, these schools need to be held accountable. They need to have essentially affirmative action programs for conservatives. And it's quite ironic, given how much conservatives claim they're against affirmative action, but then they want to go down and head count how many professors of sociology or English or anthropology at Harvard University are registered Republicans or Democrats. Think about how outraged they would be if the Democrats in Congress or progressives or liberals said, okay, we demand diversity at every police department. From now on, every police department has to have at least half of their police officers registered Democrats who are very much in favor of gun control. Now, obviously, if you know anything about police departments in America, they tend to skew more on the conservative Republican side of things. Same with fire departments. Imagine the outrage if Democrats said every fire department has to have half of their firefighters as registered Democrats, or the number of Democrats on a fire department have to be representative of the overall percentage of Democrats in a city or a community. Conservatives would be up in arms saying, this is DEI, this is quotas. And that is essentially what they're asking for at universities. I mean, it just shouldn't be surprising that certain professions attract certain people of like-mindedness. If you are going to be a world-class chef at a steakhouse, there's probably a good chance you're not a vegetarian. Are we going to tell the owners of Burns Steakhouse, okay, from now on, 10% of all your chefs have to be vegetarian? Well, no. Chances are their chefs enjoy meat and like meat. So I'll be keeping an eye on this. I do think this is also tied into what happened this past weekend with the No Kings rally. According to some, the overall number of people protesting could have been as high as 5 or 7 million people. It is, by some measures, the largest public protest since 1970 in the United States. I know I talked to a lot of people in my circles who were afraid to go to earlier No Kings rallies, one in June, for example, afraid of being targeted, afraid of violence. And many of them told me, TJ, you know what? I'm still afraid, but I'm more afraid of what's happening to our country. And people put aside their own personal fears and went and spoke out and demonstrated and showed they have opposition to this country's leadership. And fortunately, there were absolutely no major signs of violence anywhere, and very, very few arrests. I want to thank you for joining me today. You can always leave comments. I appreciate those of you stopping by. SS stops by and says, hello, wow. The fitness test is not that hard, talking about issue from our previous story. Maybe that 7 out of 10 obese Americans article you shared with was correct, talking about something we talked about earlier this week, where depending on new criteria by health organizations, as many as 7 out of 10 Americans are not just overweight, but are clinically obese. SS also says, I know in college there is something called the freshman 15, which is that students gain 15 pounds in their freshman year. I certainly heard of that. And I think a lot of them are not waiting till they get to college to do that. It's happening in high school and middle school as well. So Next is writing in. Next vein says, really enjoying your stream and your content and energy stand out. I'd love to stay in touch and support more of your work. Reach out to me. Thank you. It's Clinton-129. So Next vein, thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate you. And you can reach out to me as well, tj@tjwalker.com. I'm very accessible. Thank you so much. And other comments coming in as well. If you'd like to comment, and Messenger 911 says, Donald Trump is like a long-haired liberal Jew. I'm paraphrasing, but interesting. Never really thought of it that way. But Messenger 911, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing that. We're going to switch to issue 3 in just a moment, so you're not going to want to miss that. Stay tuned. Lots to come today on Filtered with TJ Walker. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filtered. This is the show where we look at the top business stories, technology, economic stories, and culture stories of the day, filter it through the lens of communication and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you personally more successful in your professional life as well as your personal life. Issue 3, GOP senators break with Trump over nominee's racist texts. According to the Times, President Trump's pick to lead the Office of Special Counsel, Paul Ingrassia, is facing collapse after Politico revealed a series of shocking racist text messages. In one, Ingrassia bragged to fellow Republicans that he had a, quote, a Nazi streak in him. In another, he wrote that federal holiday honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. should be tossed into the 7th circle of hell, end quote. At least 4 Republican senators, including Majority Leader John Thune, have said they'll oppose the nomination, enough to potentially sink it if Democrats vote as a bloc. And I don't think there's much danger of any Democrat voting for this nominee. Senator Rick Scott of Florida told reporters flatly, "I do not support him." Ingrassia, a self-described constitutional law expert who once pushed the fake theory that Nikki Haley was ineligible to run for president, has denied the text, denied sending them, claiming they have been manipulated somehow. But his past comments and associations, including representing misogynist influencer Andrew Tate, have fueled outrage. Meanwhile, Vox reports that similar extremist language has surfaced among young Republican activists when leaked chats showing jokes about, quote, sending people to the gas chamber, an open admiration for Hitler. Vice President J.D. Vance dismissed the uproar as pearl clutching. Together, these scandals raise a sobering question. Is the modern GOP ready to confront the hate creeping in within its own ranks, or only when it becomes politically inconvenient? Okay, what's the real message here with this administration nominating someone for a senior position in government who says, I have a Nazi streak in me? That's too much, even for a handful of Republican senators. Finally, it looks like there is a line that cannot be crossed. That's a good thing. Let's dig a little deeper here. I used the word hate advisedly and reservedly, because I think it is a word that's thrown around a little too frequently in public discourse, and more about that in a moment in our next story. But when you say you have a Nazi streak in it, I just don't know any way of spinning that in a way that doesn't involve hate. I mean, if it's the one thing Nazis are known for, hating Jews, hating people who are different, hating people who don't say Heil Hitler. So when you openly embrace something that has a singular image, a brand image like the Nazis, it's fair game to say you are very much a part of hate, that you're spewing hate. If I say I like chocolate ice cream and you like vanilla ice cream, and you now say, TJ, you're the worst person in the world because you hate vanilla ice cream, well, that's nonsense. I simply said I prefer chocolate ice cream. So there is a huge difference, which we will talk about in a moment. But first, more on this issue. It is interesting to see that some of these Republicans are getting a tiny bit of spine, a tiny bit of backbone, and doing something they've not done much of in the last 10 months. They are standing up to Trump because this is the Trump nominee for Office of Special Counsel, Paul Ingrassia, and you have the Senate Republican leader, John Thune, who's normally doing whatever his president asked him to do, saying, I'm not going to support this guy. Rick Scott, nobody's idea of a liberal civil rights, look out for the little guy kind of politician, is saying, I don't support this guy. What's happening, I think, is a number of Republicans are reading the room, and they're seeing more and more frustration with this administration. They're seeing in their own communities thousands, hundreds of thousands of people coming out for this No King's Day. And they see the day at some point the political support could crater for this administration, even within their own party. And they're trying to prepare themselves. They want to say, well, I didn't follow the extreme parts of this. I was only there for the tax cutting and the good parts. I wasn't there for the racism part. You can see that happening right now if you sift through the tea leaves. So let's look at some more of the issues here. Again, it's one thing to say, I think people are sometimes too touchy to shout anti-Semitism or racism. You can be a respectable, honest, non-hating person and make a statement like that. But to say I have a Nazi streak in me is much more extreme. It's okay if you don't admire Martin Luther King Jr. It's simply saying, I'm not a huge fan of King. I don't think automatically makes you a racist. But to say a holiday for Martin Luther King is the seventh circle of hell, given that to most people in popular culture, Martin Luther King stood for one thing, rights for Black people. You're really saying giving rights to Black people is the worst possible thing that could have ever happened to our society. I just don't know how you spin that other than an absolute endorsement of racism. Now, I don't think it's fair to say a lawyer who represented an unpopular person is therefore disqualified from public service. I will stick up for this guy in that regard. Apparently, he represented Andrew Tate, the renowned misogynist, rapist, influencer. I don't think that in and of itself is disqualifying, unless he did it all pro bono. I don't know. And this, again, ties in to this big story that has kind of not gotten much play in the mainstream media. This Telegram post by an organization called Young Republicans. Now, when you hear that term, Young Republicans, it makes you think of a bunch of, 12-year-olds, maybe 18-year-olds, maybe someone 21, a senior in college. The legal definition of being a bona fide member of the Young Republicans is 39 years old. You can be 39 years old and be a member of this Young Republican organization. Doesn't sound very young to me. And let's not forget, some of the people on this chat that openly embraced Hitler, openly embraced gassing Jews, openly embraced Holocaust, that used the N-word and the most obscene derogatory comments. It wasn't just college Republicans. It wasn't just young aides to members of the House and Senate and state legislative aides. It was a member of a state legislature, someone who has voting power, deciding on policies that could affect human life, was in on this group chat where for months, people are just openly embracing their love of Hitler, their love of Nazism, their hatred and contempt for gays, for Blacks, for minorities. And it was just like you and me talking about the weather. It was so commonplace. Vice President J.D. Vance just said, any outrage about that's just pearl clutching, meaning you're just being overly sensitive. I could tell you, if the tables were turned, if you had a bunch of young Democrats on a Telegram chat room openly talking about their desire to see certain conservatives or members of a Christian religion taken out or fed to lions, they would be so outraged, J.D. Vance would be the first one to hold a press conference demanding the Pam Bondi arrest and imprison all those people as terrorists. And yet here we are on the other side, and it was ignored by J.D. Vance, which is not surprising because he wants to make sure there is no space between him and Trump. He figures if I can just stay on the good side of this guy and he not kick me to the curb like he does everyone else, if I can just stay close to him and never, ever, ever give him a reason to be annoyed with me, I'll get to be president one day. That is clearly the philosophy of J.D. Vance. But interestingly, a number of the senators, Republican senators, are saying, nah, we're going to have to say time out a minute. We're not going to go along this time with what the administration wants. Is this a sign of things to come and new backbone and new morality regarding race and anti-Semitism in the Republican Party? Too soon to tell. But I think it's a positive development. More in a moment about issues regarding hate in American politics. We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40 plus years of real world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to advertise to ambitious upscale professionals who actually care about communication, success, and results? Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. And no, we don't take ads for crypto, supplements, or junk food. If you've ever struggled with nerves, unclear messaging, or just not being taken seriously, this is for you. I created the TJ Walker Success Library as a crash course in professional level communication. You get 5 downloadable books for just $9.95 that walk you through public speaking, media training, persuasive communication, confidence building, and daily practice routines. This is the same training I've delivered to presidents, CEOs, and leaders in 45 nations, boiled down and instantly accessible. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download them now. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm TJ Walker. Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to dive right into our next issue today, and it involves a member of the U.S. Congress. Congressman Perry says Democrats hate the military, a classic political straw man. According to the New York Times, Republican Congressman Scott Perry claimed Democrats, quote, hate the military and don't care about the Constitution or the nation's defense. Perry is a retired brigadier general. He accused Democrats of joining the military only to run for office, a statement many veterans in Congress called false and insulting. His remarks echo President Trump's recent declaration that, quote, the left has the devil's ideology, part of a long-running pattern in American politics, accusing opponents of hating the country simply because they disagree. From Joe McCarthy's Red Scare to love it or leave it chants during Vietnam, politicians have used the straw man argument to silence dissent. Historically, labeling opponents as anti-American replaces debate with moral condemnation. Perry's attack fits neatly into that lineage, reducing policy disagreements into accusations of treason. Democratic veterans fired back. Representative Pat Ryan, a West Point graduate, said, quote, "I love this country, and he's an insurrectionist traitor." I believe he was talking about Trump on that one. Navy veteran Representative Chris DeLuzio said Perry has no right to question others' patriotism. And 6 tour combat veteran Kate Conley said, quote, "We are the military too. We serve out of love for this country." Okay, so what's the real message here? When people are so insecure about their own ideals, their own facts, their own case, they resort to name calling. The cheapest, easiest thing to do in American politics is to say, "You said something I don't agree with, therefore you're a hater, 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 hater." And that's what we're hearing every day out of this administration and their minions in the media delivering talking points. Let's go a little bit deeper here. I do think it's possible for politicians to espouse hate. As we mentioned in the previous story today, when certain nominees for high-level office have a paper trail, an electronic paper trail saying, "I love Hitler," or "I have a Nazi streak in me," I think it's fair to say that person has some hatred in them. And it could, in theory, go both ways. If a Democrat nominates someone who is known as tweeting constantly, "I love when Minister Farrakhan says that Jews are dirty and part of a gutter religion. I like that," then I think you could make the case that that Democrat is a person of hate and espouses hate. But I don't see anyone like that getting appointed to office or being nominated for office in America today. If you do, let me know. I do see people routinely nominated for high office who have seemed very friendly, positive, and indeed endorsing Hitler and Nazism. And this was something that for so long seemed beyond the pale. If you even mentioned that someone did that, it would seem like you've lost credibility because you're jumping the shark. You're too over the top. You're exaggerating somehow. But there's nothing to exaggerate here between this Telegram email list and what Politico discovered about this nominee and for the Trump administration, that he actually has a Nazi streak in him. Those are real things of hate. To say that just because someone is a member of the Democratic Party, they're by definition hateful. Now, I received that in the last week for me simply covering and talking about the No King's Day. I had people posting on some of my own social media posts that the No King's Day is simply about hating. It's people who hate America. Again, you're not winning a debate. All you're doing is shutting down debate. You're saying anyone who disagrees with me is beyond the pale because they're espousing hatred. And again, sometimes you can do that. If someone says, "I hate all Christians," or "I hate all N-word," I think you can correctly say, okay, that person is full of hate. But simply taking a different position on policies, on, "Oh, I think the top marginal tax rate should be 39%, not 31%, to just dismiss that and say, "Well, that's hateful," not very credible. So that's my real message to you. If in your own career, you differ with someone in a Monday morning staff meeting, give facts. It's okay to talk about emotionally why you're in favor of a particular position. But just to say, Sally in accounting doesn't like my plan for divvying up parking spaces, therefore she's a hateful monster, isn't going to be very credible. Sally's not going to like you. Maybe you're not worried about her, but the board of directors, your colleagues, others are not going to respect you. If you want to persuade, you have to use a combination of facts, logic, and emotion. If all you do is spew emotion, "I hate that person, so they must be hateful," you're not going to persuade anyone. You may, in fact, shore up your base. If your Monday morning staff meeting is full of people who already hate Sally for some reason, yeah, maybe saying she's full of hate is enough, but it's not going to persuade anyone. Let's look at a few more facts here. Okay, so Representative Pat Ryan called Congressman Perry. I got that wrong. I thought he was talking about Trump. So let me fact check myself. Called Perry an insurrectionist traitor. I believe what he's referring to is that Congressman Perry presumably endorsed the actions on January 6th, trying to overturn the popular will, the Electoral College, and the popular vote of the 2020 election, and did not condemn the traitors. I don't know if Perry was actually there on the Capitol that day. I don't think so. Navy veterans like Chris DeLuzio said Perry had no right to question other services. Others have said this is un-American. I do think it is okay to say someone is un-American if they say something that is just blatantly against core principles of this country. And I do think part of what our founders had in mind when they put this country together was, look, we don't want kings. That's why we're creating this. We don't want to be ruled by King George anymore. We want it to be diffuse and give power to the people. Yeah, they didn't want everyone voting. I get it. I understand it. But they didn't want power in one person. And they thought that people could come together. And in their time, they thought it was wealthy white men with land. But they wanted those men to come together and give arguments, reasons, have debate about laws. That was the concept. The other concept was you make your case, you cast votes. When one side wins, the other side accepts it, and they go on to have a discussion about other issues the next day. They don't continually say, well, you're a traitor, you're a monster, you're un-American, you're filled with hate, because they won the debate on any one day. Those were the assumptions of our founders. And increasingly, we are seeing in a certain segment of America, people saying, you know what, forget what these founders wanted. Let's just say it's our way or no way. More in just a moment. Like what you heard? Don't let the algorithm bury us. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Want direct access to me live? Want to unlock bonus episodes, behind the scenes takes, and full access to my premium courses? Then become a member today. Just go to tjwalker.com/members and choose your preferred platform, YouTube, Patreon, whatever works for you. This isn't just another subscription. It's a full access pass to the tools, coaching, and content that can transform your communication and career. tjwalker.com/members. I'll see you inside. Welcome back to Filtered. The internet's favorite pastry chef goes full Wonka, and so do we. According to the New York Times, French pastry chef Cédric Grolet has turned Paris into his own Willy Wonka wonderland. His new chocolate shop, Cédric et la Chocolateria, features a 330-pound chocolate waterfall and crowds lined up just to smell the air. Grolet, with nearly 13 million Instagram followers, has built a global dessert empire in only 5 years. But here's the part where I get unpopular. Science shows our sweet obsession is mostly psychological. In double-blind taste tests from Yale University and Consumer Reports, participants couldn't reliably tell luxury chocolate from mid-priced brands, with accuracy barely above 40%. What swayed them? Packaging, ambiance, and presentation. Even a famous Stanford study found that people's brains light up more when told a chocolate is, quote, expensive, even when the samples are identical. Grolet's success is proof. We taste what we see. His desserts are exquisite, but his true genius lies in presentation. He sells not just flavor, but fantasy, a bite of beauty in a world that scrolls on looking first and tasting second. Okay, so let's dive in here a little bit more. What's the real message here about this guy's chocolate success? Is that we as humans don't really taste. We see with our eyes, we imagine things, we fantasize. The reality is, very few people anywhere can tell the difference between expensive chocolate and the mid-price stuff or even the cheap stuff. Everything else is a story we tell our mind, our heart, and our tongue. Let's go a little bit deeper here. Now, I like chocolate, and I've been to Paris, and my family and I have actually enjoyed chocolate making classes where we worked with the chocolatier, and they told us about the history of the chocolate and all the qualities and the tasting, and it was all a lot of fun. And I could tell some chocolate was different because it had sort of extreme other flavors, like tamarind sauce was put in one. That was one of my favorites, had sort of an Indian flavor to it. But beyond that, how much of this is just hype? I well remember some 15 years ago, this was back during the day of Cake Boss, a very, very popular show on cable television featuring a bakery in Hoboken, New Jersey. And it just so happened, I mean, this was before Instagram. This was, more than 15 years ago. And I remember I only lived a block away from the Cake Boss bakery. And I would walk by, and it would sometimes be dead of winter. It's 10 degrees out. People are wrapped around the corner in a line, not moving. Some of them holding 2-year-olds and 1-year-old babies in their arms in 10-degree weather, risking pneumonia, death, because they wanted to get into this bakery because they were convinced it was the best bakery in the whole world. Now, I'm sure it tasted good, but you know what? All cake with lots of sugar and butter and chocolate and icing taste good. That's how our mouths and brains are wired as human beings. We are wired to like sugary treats. This idea that it's so much better because we like the drama of seeing these chefs yell back and forth. Now, I have nothing negative to say about Cédric Grolet. I don't think I went to any of his shops when I was in Paris. And I'm sure he's good on video, 13 million Instagram fans. He's doing something right. If nothing else, he might not be the world's greatest chocolatier, but he is an extraordinarily skilled social media maven. You got to give him credit for that. There's no doubt about that. But here's the part where, again, I become very unpopular. It's the same with beer. It's the same with chocolate. It is the same with it's certainly the same with liquor and things like vodkas. We as human beings like to tell ourselves that we are so sophisticated and we are people of such good taste that we can clearly discern, and wine is the worst of all of these things. We tell ourselves, we lie to ourselves. We take in all these messages communicated by who's endorsing. I mean, I like George Clooney, but am I going to go buy his tequila because his name is on the bottle? No. But when you see a bottle endorsed by George Clooney, it makes you feel like, oh, I'm classy, I'm elegant, I'm rich, I'm successful. I am socializing in Lake Bellagio in Italy. It creates that fantasy. When you see a guy like this in Paris, you think of the mystique of Paris and the great food culture there. And there's a lot of great food in Paris. That really is true. But I'm urging you, don't buy into the hype. Am I telling you can't enjoy a nice, expensive piece of chocolate? No, enjoy it. But whatever you do, I beg you, if you're going all the way to Paris on vacation and you have limited time, don't spend a day waiting to get inside of a shop just because you've seen the person on Instagram every day for the last 2 years. This is increasingly an annoyance in places like, all major cities. But New York City, a place I go to a lot, you'll see these long lines around the corner, people dying to get into this pizza shop. And it turns out it's because they have a good Instagram feed, or an ice cream shop where there are people waiting 2 hours for, I'm sorry, there's no ice cream in the world that's worth waiting for 2 hours. It just isn't. Because you know what? All ice cream tastes good unless you get really, really bad stuff. But when you put enough fat and enough sugar and you freeze it and you put a few other, it's going to taste good. And excuse me if that makes me seem like a Philistine to you, but it's a bit of the emperor wears no clothes situation where everyone's telling you, oh, don't you see how great this is? And you think, oh, I want to show everyone what good taste I have. I'm going to go to the place everyone's talking about. It's a bit of a manipulation. Now, we all do that at some level. I don't want to seem holier than thou, but I do want to protect you, protect your time and protect your wallet, and realize that in most situations, the difference between $10 chocolate and $80 chocolate is non-existent to your taste bud. The difference between a $20 bottle of wine and a $90 bottle of wine, in most cases, is going to be non-existent to your taste buds and everyone you know. And you can say I'm a Philistine. You can say I'm unsophisticated. No, this is the height of sophistication, of understanding what's real and what is manipulation. And chocolate and food and liquor and all these other things are a combination of the packaging, the color, of the branding, of the endorser, of the room you're in when you experience it. And it's fine to want nice things and enjoy all of those things, but don't delude yourself. If you want to enjoy chocolate, sometimes the inexpensive store-bought chocolate is going to be fine. Now, I'm a big fan of dark chocolate primarily because I want to reduce my sugar intake. So I do pay attention to that, but I'm not going to pay more for a particular brand. I will pay more for having the lowest possible sugar and milk content and having higher chocolate content. But the problem there is if you want pure satisfaction, the sugar, the highest quality chocolate with the least amount of milk added and the least amount of sugar doesn't taste nearly as good, but it is better. I just remembered, I've been to actual chocolate making factories in other countries. I think I was in the Caribbean last year and went to an actual factory where they made chocolate. It's interesting, the process, and you taste it. And I've done chocolate macaroon making classes in Paris as well. It's all fun, but don't kid yourself. Chances are that if you really, really like it and it tastes good, it might be the cheap stuff. It just is. That concludes our main section of the show. We typically look at the top 5 stories of the day and then try to break it down in terms of what's real, what's essential, and what do you need to know, and then what lessons can be learned from it. And then we have a grab bag section where I look at other stories. There's one story I'm reluctant to bring it up because this show, for those of you here for the first time, you have heard me talk some about some political figures today. This is not a political punditry show. This is a show that is really a business show that's devoted to helping you in your business career and in life. And we look at top business stories, technology, marketing, artificial intelligence stories, and culture stories, filtering it through the lens of communication skills. But unfortunately, when you live in a society where there is an authoritarian takeover of all aspects of business, culture, technology companies, it's hard not to talk about politics, which does bring me to one of our grab bag sections today. And it is the issue of let me pull up this story for you. 1 second, this image. And forgive me, those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see this. I'm showing a picture of what was the White House. And there's a giant crane trashing it, destroying it. I saw this earlier today, and my first thought was, oh, this must be from a movie. This must be artificial intelligence from some dystopian future where some evil tyrant somehow gets into the White House, either through legitimate or illegitimate means, and starts destroying the White House, literally, and rebuilding it into a king's palace. I thought that's what I was seeing. It turns out I was wrong. This is an actual picture of the White House in Washington, D.C., being literally destroyed. It's being destroyed ostensibly to make improvements, to build this giant golden room so there can be much larger parties and much larger state dinners. So it's being destroyed to create a much, much larger ballroom. And my initial thought was, just imagine if this had been done by President Biden or President Obama. I guarantee, there's few guarantees in life, but I'll give you this one. If President Biden or President Obama had started tearing apart and bulldozing the White House to create a giant golden ballroom fitting of a king or dictator, the articles of impeachment would have been drawn up in about 5 minutes. The vote in the House would have happened in about 10 minutes. And the conviction in the Senate would have happened in about 20 minutes if this had happened. But this barely gets a mention in our modern culture because so many other bizarre, crazy things are going on that are literally and figuratively tearing down the structures of our society. Now, most of the things we talk about, using the military against American citizens on American land, ignoring court orders, spending money that Congress did not allocate, not spending money that Congress did allocate, that is tearing apart American society and principles metaphorically. But this is literally tearing apart the foundations of American government. We see it right here with our own eyes. And if you are listening on our podcast today, thank you for doing so. Please do yourself a favor. Go to ChatGPT or Google, whatever you like to search, and just type in White House renovation or White House bulldozer and hit image or ask it for an image. And you will be shocked at what you see. I mean, it's really kind of sad. Now, I'm not one of those who says, our government is all about the imagery and it's all about the building. If the United States Capitol fell apart tomorrow, they could build another building. That's not what is special about our government. But still, there is something about the mystique of the White House. If you've never been to it, I urge you to go. It is a fascinating historic building. And seeing history like this ripped apart to create something bigger, bolder, more golden, I do think speaks for what the times are. All that implies, good and bad. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. This is Filtered. This is your daily dose at looking at the top business, economic, technology stories of the day and culture stories filtered through the lens of personal development and communication skills. My pledge to you is spend a little time with me each day. You'll learn more about the news and you'll learn more about yourself, how you can improve. We are going to start a feature where I'm answering your questions as well, especially if it relates to communication skills. Many of you know me because for 40 years, and continue to do so, have done media training and communication skills and public speaking training workshops around the world. My work has taken me to 45 nations. I've worked with tens of thousands of people face-to-face in person, and I have 12 million student enrollments for my online courses. The number one question I do get from students is, TJ, how can I get over being nervous before giving a presentation? How can I be more confident when I'm lacking confidence to give a presentation? And I could give you the 30-hour answer to that, which we don't have time for today, the 1-hour answer, which we don't have time for, Or I could give you the 30-second answer, which we do have time for. The number one way to get over being nervous is to practice your presentation on video, just using your cell phone, again and again until you like what you see. When you get to the point where you like how you're coming across, it becomes virtually impossible to be nervous. So please give that tip a try before your next presentation, because I want you to be successful. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow. Don't forget, please subscribe. Our own records show that most people listening on podcasts don't follow or subscribe to the show. Please do so. Please leave a review. If you're watching on any platform, please leave a comment, sign up for notifications, and subscribe. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.